This video will deal with the techniques that I personally use for taking photographs of wildlife from a kayak. It was filmed in southwest Florida near Pine Island. I have been photographing wildlife from a kayak for about 26 years in 5 different states: Alaska, Minnesota, Texas, Georgia, and in Florida. The equipment I generally use in my kayak is a Nikon D200 camera and an older Nikon 80 to 400 millimeter zoom. I like that equipment because it is relatively inexpensive, and if I were to damage it by salt water or some other means, it would not be a terrible loss. I have better equipment, but I choose not to risk it in the kayak, although I've never had a close call with a kayak. This panorama was taken from my kayak, handheld, and consists mainly of great egrets and wood storks. They were not moving much that morning, and it worked out fairly well for me. When you're close to the birds, move slowly and try not to make any unnecessary sounds or movements. Stressing the birds will be counterproductive. They'll fly away, leaving you with few, if any, pictures. I am often able to get fairly close without stressing the birds. With a little practice, you can judge how close is close enough. Different varieties of birds respond differently to your presence. Roseate spoonbills, which are among my favorites, are not very shy at all, especially when feeding heavily. Even when you have plenty of distance, eventually they will want to go elsewhere to be with others of their kind or for better food or whatever. With a little experience, you can often sense when a bird is about to fly. I usually zoom out a little to give me a better chance to keep the bird in frame as he flies off. I do recommend a digital single lens reflex camera and a good zoom lens. Some bridge cameras will be adequate. Most point and shoot cameras just don't have a large enough zoom range to get good close shots, and the shutter lag is too slow to get the shot you want instantly. I like having a viewfinder as I have difficulty seeing much on an LCD screen in daylight. Mornings are good because of the golden hour light and the winds are usually lower. When looking for birds on estuaries and tidal flats, I try to go out with very low tides. I find the birds are often on the tidal flats at first light looking for breakfast. In Florida, low tides often expose large areas which the birds seem to find irresistible. They seem to disappear from the flats after a couple hours, which corresponds to the loss of the best light anyway. I always look for the low tides at first light. That's when I have my best luck. I strongly recommend a dry bag, which you can see in the clip here. Uh, it can save you the loss of some camera equipment if you were to get a wave over the side. I also use a towel when the camera is out of the dry bag and I'm not actually taking pictures with it. Keep it handy and but still dry in case some water comes off the paddle, which it will. Kayaks are great for wildlife photography because you can often approach to within just a few feet of your subject. They have a low profile and they're very quiet. Also, there is a very low center of gravity for good stability. In these next three clips, you'll see some raccoons on the shore up against the mangroves. At one point, they're as little as 20 feet away. It shows what can be done with a kayak. Many animals have never seen anything like that up close, and they don't really know what to make of it. Unfortunately, I'd have pictures, except I'd taken over 500 pictures that morning, and I had run my battery out completely. Kind of embarrassing. People often ask if I worry about tipping over with expensive camera equipment. I've never even come close to tipping while in the kayak itself with either of my kayaks, an Old Town Loon, which I keep in Minnesota, or my Hurricane Santee, which I keep in Florida. I once rented a sea kayak in Alaska and found the narrow kayaks to be faster, but much less stable and quite a bit tippier. Wide is good for stability. Getting in and out can be a little trickier, especially if the kayak is free floating. I always try to place the camera equipment on the shore or dock until I am fully seated when getting in and until I have exited the kayak on my way out. The trickiest part of using a kayak is getting in and out of them. Sit-on kayaks are usually easier to get in and out, but I find them to be wetter and not as good for camera gear. They are also usually heavier. To get into a kayak, I usually have the kayak sitting in about 3 inches of water near the shore. I step into the very middle of the kayak, keeping my weight right on the center line of the kayak. Facing forward, then I try to sit down with as much grace as I can manage. I use the paddle for a support in both getting in and getting out of the kayak. Getting out of the kayak can be a little trickier because you're working against gravity. I always have the kayak in very shallow water, as shallow as I can get it, and using the paddle as a support, I try to sit up on the back of the seat and then either put my legs over the side and pry myself out, or else straddle the kayak and sort of walk forward, pushing the kayak back underneath me until I'm clear of it. This next sequence was filmed in the Okefenokee Swamp in Georgia. There's quite a story that goes along with this, but suffice it to say, I definitely do not recommend getting this close to a mother alligator and her babies, especially in such tight quarters. I also film with a standalone GoPro camera. and now a drone. And I hope to be submitting some videos using both of those methods in the not too distant future. And these would be some samples of what you might see in the future. This concludes the narration of my video. I will wrap it up with about another minute of pictures I have taken from my kayak in Minnesota. I hope you've enjoyed this and have learned something. If you like it, subscribe to my channel, and best of luck in your photography.